All right. Hello and welcome back to another week of Open Mic Night. I'm really glad that you guys could join us tonight. We are privileged. We have some guests on the show tonight. And tonight we're going to talk all about how 2015 may be the year of podcasting. And so tonight I am joined by the gentlemen from Red Button Jam Fest. And they're not on video. So if you guys are watching the video, they're not there. I just have them piped in through the audio. But guys, how's it going?
It's going
great.
Good. So, okay,
well.
so right now we have Brian, James, and Nate. And so each of you say hi and tell a little bit about yourself. I know if you guys have watched the show in the past, we actually had these guys on last fall. But go ahead and just introduce yourself again.
Sure. Okay, I can go first. This is Brian. I basically do a lot of the retro gaming, different game dingleberries and marathons and throwback Thursday Throwdown episodes for the most part. But I also do my own Back to the Past podcast, which is a show that comes out every 2 weeks. And then on the intermittent weeks, I release articles from things of trying to save money to Brian's rants to just a variety of different articles. So, yeah, that's me.
I'm Nate. I do Nathan Choose Disney Reviews. I join in on the Thursday Throwback Throwdown, and random guys talk about and whatever else I can come help with. I've been a little slow on getting stuff out lately just because I recently got engaged and in the process of moving too.
Oh, congratulations.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Very cool.
And my name is James. I work with these two awesome guys over here. We do the Random Guys. We also do morning after reviews. Also got a little show with one of our other associates by name of Tim, with Tim and Jim, tackling tough topics while using webcams. That's definitely a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
I definitely enjoy our Throwback Thursday Throwdowns and our other shows we got going on. We got a few in development here and there, and I'm looking forward to unleashing that. And I also do kind of the web programming end of things too. So
very cool. So in total, Red Button Jam Fest is like a network of these shows. How many shows in total do you guys produce?
Oh, if we had to count them all up, probably. Let's see here.
ooh, we got to think about this.
Yeah, let's see. We've got 3 different podcasts that we currently run. We have the Morning After Review, Back to the Past podcast, and Random Guys.
And then for videos, we got Nathan Choose Disney Reviews, Game Dingleberries, Tim and Jim tackling tough topics while using webcams. And we also have our one-offs, which are kind of like random videos. And then we have our Twitch streams, which is kind of a different set. So we have Throwback Thursday Throwdown, Random Cast, and our marathons. And we're thinking about doing more. And then we have articles. Nate does Nathan's Arizona Wonder. Sorry, my tongue was tripped up there. Brian does his thoughts, and I don't really do many articles, to be honest, but I did one.
But needless to say, you guys produce quite a bit of shows, quite a lot of content on there.
Probably about 12 unique things.
Very cool. So that's why I kind of brought you guys on tonight, because I want to do one episode in 2015 talking about how, the popularity of podcast is definitely growing and creating content is a lot of fun. And I think, some of my viewers have expressed interest in going out and creating their own podcast. And so I wanted to bring you guys on because you guys have done it. You guys have created your own podcast. And I kind of want to get your guys' perspective on some of the things, like what you need to start a podcast, what kind of stuff you can kind of, we'll push that off if it costs money and stuff like that. So if you guys are down, I think that'd be a fun conversation to have.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds great.
Very cool. Very cool. So the first thing I kind of want to tell everyone was that the reason that this year, a lot of the podcasters nowadays are saying that this is the year of podcasting is because there was a really, really successful podcast that went online about last year. I can't remember when last year, but it was NPR's Serial podcast. And I'm sure most of you have heard about it, or you've heard me talk about it, or heard someone in your office or at school talk about it. It's a hugely popular podcast. And it was really one of the first podcasts that got people who don't normally listen to podcasts into podcasts. So what Serial was, it's a seasoned show. And so this past season, they go and they pick up a story of a gentleman who is in jail But and you're trying to figure out if he actually did the crime or not, if he actually murdered the person or not. And so I can't even remember how many episodes it was, maybe 15, 18, 20 episodes. I'm not really sure, but it goes throughout, and each episode is a part of the story. And so you get really hooked into waiting for next week's episode. And it took off like wildfire. And like I said, it got a lot of people listening to podcasts. And then when people started listening, they said, hey, this podcast thing is pretty cool. And they start looking for other podcasts. And so we think that 2015 might be the year that podcasts really do take off. And, the general public starts to get into podcasting. Did you guys ever listen to Serial, any of you, or had you heard about it at all?
Yeah, this is Brian. I did. I thought one of my coworkers at my day job told me about it, and I started listening to it. And I think I probably came in like 3 episodes to the end.
Okay.
And I was listening to him, back to back to back, and yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, highly produced shows, and I think that's going to be, maybe the distinguishing factor in these podcasts this year is, you see a show like that has to cost. It has a huge budget. It's very, very highly produced and takes a long time to put together. It's not like the open mic night right now where, we hit the record button, we go live, and then, do some simple editing at the end, and that's about it. And, the budget is zero for this show, really. But I think people really liked the fact that podcast was very highly produced, but that's not to say that, an everyday podcaster couldn't do that high level of a show. But I listened to it. I got into it. My coworker told me about it about 7 episodes in. And so my wife and I listened in the car and stuff like that. And we actually found ourselves skipping around to like different episodes. So we'd skip 3 episodes because a lot of it was a little bit slow in the middle. And maybe that's just my wife's and I's we like stories to be done in 1 episode. We're used to listening to, like This American Life or the Moth podcast, where the entire story is told in that, 45 minutes to hour, and then it's done. And so we had kind of been used to that. So it's kind of hard for us to get into a podcast that was a season long, where this one story is dragged out over 18 episodes. But I think the general public actually really enjoyed it and really liked that style.
Yeah.
Well, what helped too is how every episode ended up doing a recap for the first few minutes of the previous episode. So even if you missed one, I guess, quote unquote, missed one on podcast, you can always download it. But if you want to stay current with the most up-to-date one, at least you can go ahead and get the recap of one from before.
It's kind of like harkening back to the silver age of radio, where you essentially had shows like The Shadow, or like how Lucy started off before television, having that kind of broadcast that's week after week, something to look forward to, at the story that continues on. And I think the thing that's exciting about podcasts is that might have quite a production budget behind it, but podcasts generally have a low, I think, barrier of entry in terms of cost. Like it's not too cost effective if someone wants to do a podcast, I think.
That's very true. I'm actually glad you brought that up, because that's what we're going to talk about a little later, is kind of what you do need to actually get into podcasting. Mm-hmm. And we can talk about that low barrier of entry. But do you guys think that 2015 is going to be the year, or do we still need some more time for podcasting to take off?
That's a good question. I think, it's one of those things I think that's been like growing for a long time. Podcasting, being able to record an MP3 and release it to many people over the internet, it's been around for a long time.
Right.
So, iTunes popularized that. I think it was somewhere around 2006, maybe 2005, somewhere around there.
Yep.
And, and ever since then, slowly but surely, different radio programs have offered their show, usually at, for free, sometimes at a nominal price per month, to get their shows that you might have missed. And then when the software became available for everyone else to use, I think, you can, I think more and more people have just been joining on. So I think we're probably in an era where 2015's.
I totally feel so. I think that with the ease of use of just getting digital media and generally, even on your phone, and having that Bluetooth hands-free onto your car to listen to, or however you like to do it, I think that there's many different ways you can listen to your audio. Right. That's became way more flexible than before. And I think 2015, if anything, like Serial did millions of downloads. But there's so many other big podcasts out there, I think, too. And I think the growth is still there. And I think this would be the year of the podcasts. Yeah. Or we're close.
Definitely. And James, I think you nailed it when you said the software and how you are able to consume your podcast, because I think whenever that switch happened where you could almost sync it wirelessly to whatever device you were on, that was when, podcasting really the doors opened up, because like you said before, you could download podcasts on iTunes, but then you had to plug your iPod into your computer, sync over the ones you wanted. And, it was kind of a monotonous process. But now that we have these apps on our phone where it's instant, and with cellular coverage nowadays, you can almost even stream the episode. You don't even need to download it. And so it just becomes so easy to consume. And with especially iOS 8, Apple makes the podcast app on the phone by default, and you can't even take it off. And so that was even a big help into getting people to say, hey, if you have an iPhone, you already have a easy means of getting a podcast. You literally have to go in there and search for it, and you can find the podcast and subscribe. So it's really easy. So yeah, I would agree. I think this year is going to be the year, because I think we've had one successful podcast. I think you'll see a few more of those type of podcasts show up. But then I also think you'll have people already it's addicting. I don't know if you guys actually listen to too many podcasts, but I find it, when I'm in my car, I can't listen to music anymore. I just have to keep going through all my different podcasts that I listen to. And that's why I have about 25 to 30 podcasts subscribed at any time, because I crank through them so fast. Even when I'm sitting at my desk, usually I have a pair of earbuds in, listening to a podcast.
Not to cut you off, but this brings up a point. My friend Brian over here, when we're driving together, he'll be put on a podcast, but I think he's superhuman, because he has it set where the speed of the audio is like 2 times faster than normal.
Depends on which podcast. Sometimes I'll have it at 2.0, sometimes a 1.5.
He's just digesting that information so fast. I'm just like, wait, these sentences, their breaths are just so truncated. I mean, what's going on here, Brian?
Yeah. You know what? I do the same thing.
I haven't consumed that much, reading material in college for history. I think that's what helped me.
Speed listening. That's the new thing you're doing, Brian.
It's not speed reading.
You're pioneer.
Yeah.
It's so true. No, but I do the same thing, depending on what podcast. Some people I find actually I try to do it on mine, and I talk way too fast to go on double time. I have to actually, but for people who talk a little bit slower, I do the same thing, and you can get through your podcast so much quicker, especially because I listen to a lot of, 2-hour podcasts, 1-hour podcasts. And so if I can get that through any quicker, that's that much more information I can start cramming into my head. So, yeah, no, I agree. And see, that's another point, which is the flexibility we have now on listening to these podcasts. I mean, you can really listen to it on whatever device you want, and whatever speed you want, whatever volume you want in the car. Obviously, the car is where I get most of my listening done. Because like James said, with the Bluetooth connectivity to the car, and I just have the auxiliary cord that plugs into my dash, but that works just as well.
Oh darn, you're not Bluetooth yet?
I'm not Bluetooth yet. I am not.
And then I'm halfway between. I have one of those, I think it's from Griffin Technologies, the little, the short radio transmitter.
That's what actually my wife uses. So because her car doesn't even have the auxiliary in. She just has a CD player. And so, that's what she uses. And she
I'm not a technologist.
So, all right. So switching gears. Okay. So we've talked about how, the popularity is going to grow and stuff like that. But I think a lot of people want to get into podcasting, but it's a little bit scary. They might not know how to get into it or what equipment they need. And there are a ton of podcasts or blog posts out there to help people out with podcasting. But I just thought for my audience, I would spend one episode just talking about generally how you get into podcasting. And the fun thing about having you guys on is I know you guys do it completely different than me. I know that especially on the website side and how you host your content is completely different than the way I do it. So maybe we can kind of cover how we do our hosting just to show there's a bunch of ways to skin a cat. There's just many ways to do podcasting. And so maybe we can talk about the ways we do it and then go from there. So obviously the first thing you need when you do podcasting is a microphone. And the microphone is extremely important, probably the most important piece of equipment you will buy for your podcast. Because, we've all tried to listen to those podcasts where it's just, it sounds like they're in an empty room, or, you can hear stuff in the background and it almost drives you crazy. And so having a good microphone is essential. And I know both of us use good microphones. And so what microphone do you guys use normally when you're podcasting and even while you're on this show?
Well, to fire away, I really love to use the Blue Yeti. And it's a nice condenser microphone, and it's got a lot of good settings to it. And you can always outfit that with a shock absorber or whatnot if you want to, prevent it from getting some other kinds of noises. And
definitely. Yeah, and for those of you guys who are watching video, I actually have my Blue Yeti right here to show you guys. That's what it looks like. And the nice thing about that the Blue Yeti is that it's USB. And so it's super simple to get it connected to your computer. It doesn't take anything extra. which is really nice.
I know for me, sometimes I'm in a pickle and I don't have available the Blue Yeti at the moment when I'm recording mine. So what I try to at least do is record in a small room with lots of furniture, so the echoing doesn't bounce off too badly, because I'm just using the laptop mic at that point.
Definitely.
So just doing what I can with the opportunities available to me.
Right. Well, and that's, that really shows the versatility of a lot of people when they want to get into podcast and think, okay, well, I got to go out and buy a microphone. That's going to be like $200. But you can really make the best of what you have. And so if you want to just get right into podcasting, so the Blue Yeti is, I believe when I bought it, it was like $100. Is it still about $100? Is that how much it costs?
It's like $150.
Okay. Well, and so
I think we got ours on deal for $100, $110 or $100 around there.
Okay.
Yeah, I was looking out for sales on it. I mean, those types of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right about there. So right about $100. And the Blue Yeti is a great microphone to start out with. The one thing about it though is it is a condenser mic. And so if you are in a place with any like noises, if you live with people who are making noise, it's going to pick up the slightest sound. When I used to use it to record, I would notice that I would hear things even in the hallway. It's very, very sensitive. And those can be good if you have a controlled environment.
Yeah.
So that's why, though, I ended up switching. And so I'll talk about the microphone I use. This is actually the ATR 2100 is the one I'm using right now. And this is even cheaper. This is a $60 microphone. And if you go around and you listen to, Dave Jackson over at the School of Podcasting, or, my buddy Jim Collison over on the Average Guy.tv, a lot of them, they will suggest this microphone. That's actually where I heard about it first, was through Jim Collison. Oh. And there's a lot of reasons why I really like this microphone. First of all, like I said, about $50, $60. You can even get it for, I think, like $40 sometimes if you catch them on sale on Amazon. And so, but they are extremely high quality, and they're dynamic microphones, meaning, see how I'm so close to this microphone, and that's because it's not as sensitive as the condenser mic. And so what you're going to get is kind of a little bit of a cleaner sound, and you're not going to hear a lot of the stuff going on around me. My dog is in the other room, and if I had my Blue Yeti on, you could probably hear him scratching at things and running around. But with this dynamic microphone, you're not going to get that. But then the best feature I would say about this ATR 2100 is that it is XLR and USB. And so I know for those of you listening on audio, you can't see it, but for those of you watching on video, you can see here at the bottom of the microphone, it has a USB port, a little micro USB, and an XLR. And I'm using both at the same time, which is really cool. Because let's say you don't have a mixing board and you're just getting into podcasting, you can just use the USB, and it's fantastic. It sounds amazing. And you can USB, and that's fantastic. Or if you start getting into a little bit more advanced podcasting, and we'll talk about mixing boards in a little bit, but if you have a mixing board, you can definitely go out via XLR. And the way I do my show with a live show and with the Red Button Jam Fest guys on Skype and everything like that, I actually use both. So I have my USB going to my computer, and that goes to Skype. And then I have my XLR go to my mixing board, and that is for my main mix. And so that way I can kind of, it's a little bit way of doing a tricky mix minus. And we can talk about what that is later. But this microphone, I just think, is the most versatile microphone. And the fact that it's $50 is amazing. And then I put it in this little shock mount. So I have a shock mount here, and that cost about $12 on Amazon. Nothing big. And then the arm I use, if you guys are wanting to, if you're getting into podcasting and you're going to be sitting there talking a lot, it's hard to kind of hold a microphone up, or if you don't have a stand. These little arms that I have, I know you guys listening to audio can't see, but it's a little boom arm. And it was only like $17 on Amazon. So I actually went, pretty reasonable on all my stuff. I think, with the $20 boom arm, let's say $15 for the shock mount, for $35, and then plus the $60 microphone, this whole setup right here costs less than $100. So for less than $100, you can get actually a very good sounding setup. And so that might be a little more detail than you guys wanted on just my microphone, but that's by and large the most popular question I get when people are wanting to ask me questions about how I podcast is, what microphone did you choose? What's your setup? And so the ATR 2100 and all of the stuff we talk about tonight after the show will be in the show notes. It'll be both on YouTube and in the show notes on the webpage. And so you guys will have it all there. But yeah, the ATR 2100 is the microphone that I choose. I've actually, right down here, I have two of them. So my wife and I are starting a new podcast, and so I had to obviously get her another microphone. And so we're going to go to ATR 2100s, and then we'll go into my mixing board. So that's microphones. So you've got your microphone, and then, but obviously you need something to record it into. And so you can either use a computer or a recorder. And for starting purposes, I don't think many of you are going to go out and buy the $400 recorder, because I know I haven't. And but before I say this, actually, do you guys use a recorder or do you guys go straight into the computer?
I go straight to the computer myself.
Okay.
I record into Audacity.
Perfect. That was what I was going to ask. So
Good old Audacity.
Exactly. So when we do record into the computer, a lot of us have our application of choice for what we record into. And so I'll let you guys kind of describe what your process is. So you've plugged in your microphone into the USB and you're getting ready to record. What's your next step?
Hey, Nate, do you have something you wanted to say for a second here?
Yeah, I don't even, when I record the audio for like my show, I don't even use the computer. I use my phone. I bought a little $20 mic that plugs in that I clip onto my chest. And I use this app called Recordium. It's about like a $6 or $7 app, but it has pretty good audio quality for what I think. So
that is awesome.
Really
I had no idea you did that. Okay, so are you on Android or iOS?
I'm on iOS.
iOS. You have the iPhone.
Yeah.
Great. Well, do you know the name at all of the microphone you use?
It was just like a cheap Sony one that was like $20 on Amazon. I couldn't remember the name offhand.
We had to do that for one of our podcasts. Well, I don't know if it's a podcast as much. Do we use
it was.
We did. For a morning after review, we literally did a right after review because we saw a movie together, and we're like, let's record it here in a parking lot. Let's try this out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But in all honesty, with the way that episode turned out, if everyone's wondering, like, they go to our website, redbuttonjfs.com. The one I'm referring to is the Dragon Ball Z review. And it actually turned out really well. I just took that audio, converted it over into Audacity, and I didn't have to clean up the audio as much as just add stuff to the ends because I like to do little edits and post-production on the stuff.
Right, but that's good to know. I mean, just with the versatility, almost everyone has a smartphone nowadays. And so that is true. And I know for my iPad, actually, I've recorded from my iPad a few times, and I use an app called BossJock. And so BossJock Studio, it's an app. And if you combine that, actually, there's a camera adapter for the iPad and for the iPhone. I think it's for the iPhone. Now I'm starting to think it might just be for the iPad. But it's a camera adapter. Apple sells it, or you can get off-brand ones on Amazon. I bought one of those. It actually has a USB port on it. And if you plug that into the bottom of your iPad or iPhone, you can plug in a USB mic. So you could actually use your Blue Yeti, or you could plug in your USB mixing board or my ATR 2100, and you can actually just use your iPad and iPhone as a recording device. So I'm really glad you brought that up because I'd completely forgot about that option for recording. But that's really cool.
I thought it was pretty neat when he's like, let's try this out. Like, what's going on here? Is this gonna work? Because I'm so used to the big microphone kind of idea.
Right.
We're recording, Jimmy.
We're recording like, oh gosh, what to say?
So then, how do you guys get the audio, Nate, from your phone then to your computer, or do you just upload it straight from your phone?
I connect to the Wi-Fi in my house, and it says connect via Wi-Fi, and it gives you a link that you type in. And you type in that link and you can download it over Wi-Fi from your phone to your computer.
Very, very cool.
It was very nice because he sent me an email with attachment in there for it. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just got it and just did a little, like I said, just added stuff more so than really clean up the core audio itself or had to. And it came out, I think, pretty well.
Yeah. And what's the name of that app again?
Recordium.
Recordium. Okay. I'll be sure to put that in the show notes. So Recordium, and then BossJock Studio is another option for you guys.
Nice.
Cool. Okay. So for those of you, though, who use the computer, I'll talk about my setup here in a little bit, but what do you guys record into? When you plug your USB mic in and you want to hit record, what app do you guys use?
Let's see. I use the Audacity.
I actually use Audacity too. I'm not gonna lie.
Perfect.
Because I like the options it gives. I do have a bit of I'm getting used to like all different kinds of setting different audio levels, mixing tracks, separating, cutting, pasting, like even just post editing, just little sound blips that might not sound right, and you can just easily cut it out and piece together, fade in, fade out, and it's got a lot of versatility to it. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. The functionality, and I use Audacity too. So Audacity is amazing, first of all, because of a few things. It's a fully functional editor. It's got most of the things you're going to need for basic editing. It allows you to install plugins. So if someone writes a really awesome plugin that you want to use, you can use those, and it's free, which is obviously the best price point you can have. So for those of you wanting to get into podcasting, Audacity, especially if you're on the Windows side, because on the Mac side, we have GarageBand, which I go back and forth. I still can't pick between GarageBand and Audacity. I use them both, and it's honestly just what I'm feeling like when I get done recording is what I want to do. But yeah, Audacity is free, and it, like you said, it has all the options for doing most of the basic editing. You can put in a compressor effect. You can do a lot of different effects on there. So.
Yeah, I know. I have an older Mac. I don't use it as much now because I replaced it with a PC a couple years ago, but I used to use GarageBand a lot, and GarageBand's awesome.
Yeah, GarageBand. It was awesome. I'll say this. So back, GarageBand just updated recently within the last, I think, year or two, and they took out actually the preset for podcasting, which that preset made it a lot easier. So I was for a while going back and using the old version of GarageBand. Eventually I went and started using the new one. So I'm wondering if Apple will ever bring that back. But I don't know if it's one of those things if they're trying to get people to go to Logic, being their pro model of GarageBand. Yeah. But
that's so interesting because you mentioned earlier in the show about how on iOS 8, how the default now has the podcasting app.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I think from the consumption standpoint, consuming the podcast, but from the recording standpoint, they kind of dumbed it down a little bit.
Yeah, they definitely did. Well, and when you see, iTunes is the biggest marketplace for podcasts. That is where you need to get your podcast at, in order to be heard pretty much, or to get it public. And so if, iTunes is huge, it's very integral. But then like you said, on the recording side, they kind of took out that core function, that core preset for GarageBand. So I'm wondering if they'll put it back in or if they'll make that maybe a Logic thing. Not really sure, but yeah. Okay. So that actually for me is not my first step. So actually I have had a few problems in the past with both Audacity and GarageBand crashing on me when I start to record way too long. So if I get to my hour, it starts to slow down and then crash. So I'm on the Mac and I just use QuickTime. And I do new audio recording, and QuickTime for me has never crashed, obviously knock on wood, because the minute I say it, tonight it's actually going to crash. Yeah. But so right now what I'm doing is actually on my second computer, I just have my audio piped in, open up QuickTime and new audio, and they let you choose your input, and they let you choose kind of high or maximum on your quality. So I just do high. For me, high works great, especially for just a spoken word podcast. Doesn't need to be anything really high quality. So I just do the high setting and use QuickTime. And then at the end, I save that. And then like I told you guys, I pull it into GarageBand or Audacity, and I go from there. But the thing I really like about Audacity is that you can put in your ID3 tags. And so for those of you who don't know what ID3 tags are, basically what you're doing is you're telling the MP3 file that you're going to make the title of the track, the author, all the information that you want embedded actually in that MP3. Now, nowadays, with the way all of our podcast apps download it, we're subscribed all the time. All that data usually comes with the feed. But just in case someone downloads that file rogue and doesn't subscribe and they put it on, they'll still have all that information.
And one of the things I would have to say, even though it's kind of slightly off topic, is because the XML is on our servers. Even when someone's downloading something through iTunes, we get that bandwidth. We could tell how many times it gets downloaded, and who's downloading it and how it gets sources out. And it's very interesting because I have to say, in terms of just our podcast shows overall, they got a lot of traction. I think it's some of the most downloaded, intensive stuff that's taken off on the site. I think Back to the Past and things like that.
Yeah, I think you could see, because it breaks it down, it shows just how valuable iTunes is as far as getting your name out there and getting your product out there for people to consume.
Very true. Very true. So you guys are actually jumping into the next segment I want to do, which is good. Okay. So we have got our microphone, we plugged it in, we hit record, we've recorded ourselves in Audacity or GarageBand or QuickTime, whatever application you guys want to use. And then you're done and you do some basic editing in those same applications. But now we're done and we're going to export our file. So we're going to export our file to an MP3. So now we have this MP3 sitting here, but we need to get it out to our people. A podcast is a show that has episodes. And so you want to be able to get this out to your people and let them subscribe. So this is where I think this is where I love podcasting, because there's so many ways you can do this, and everyone has their own way of doing it. I think the way I do it, I'm not that creative and I don't have my own servers. So I pretty much followed kind of the default generic way, but I know you guys actually have your own system, which I think is awesome. So
Thank you.
maybe I'll describe my way, and then so they can kind of get a baseline, and then we can go into the way you guys do it. Does that work?
Cool.
Totally fine with me.
Awesome. So there's this debate going on right now in podcasting, and it's on whether you need a website or not. Do you need a website for your podcast? The answer to that, technically, if you just want to go on a yes/no, is technically no. You don't need a website. You can do it other ways. But I think if you'd ask any podcaster, even ask you guys and me and anyone out there, you want a website. You want a landing page. You want somewhere that your people can go to find information about you and just have easy access to your podcast. It's the easiest way. People kind of nowadays expect, think about when you're wanting to find a pizza place to go to. The first thing you do on your phone is probably go to Google or Google Maps. You kind of expect these people to be online, and you especially expect a podcaster to be online. And so my way of publishing my podcast is, like I said, through my website. And so omnpodcast.com is where all of my open mic night content lives. And it's going to live there. And then that's how people are going to subscribe to me. So what I do is usually you will need a website, number one, and a host, number two. And so I have my website, omnpodcast.com, and then I have my host, which I use Mediafire. And so your host is pretty much, you are going to upload all of your MP3 files there, and they are going to be the people that hold your data and distribute it out to people who want it. And so you're going to need some sort of host unless you do your own hosting. But so right now I have Mediafire, and I will upload my MP3 there. And then I go over to my website and I use WordPress. And when you use WordPress, which I would highly suggest if you're a new podcaster, if you don't know anything about web coding or anything like that, just go with WordPress. It's actually fantastically powerful and quite easy to use. And then also you just use the Blueberry PowerPress plugin on WordPress. So when I create a new blog post and I put the title in there, I put a link to where my MP3 file is. So I went over and I uploaded my file to Mediafire. That gives me a link. I put that into PowerPress. And when I hit submit, it just does all the work for me. And actually, PowerPress will tell you what your RSS feed is. Now, for those of you guys who don't know what an RSS feed is, even those of you who are subscribed to my show might not know exactly how this show gets to you. So basically, all an RSS feed is basically a feed. You just think of that. It's like a live updating feed of the person you are subscribing to. So every time I add a new post to omnpodcast.com, it adds that post to the feed. And anyone that has subscribed to that feed, then it tells them, hey, there's a new item here. Do you want me to download it? In the sense of a podcast, that's what it's going to do. And so when you submit your feed all over the place, iTunes, whenever you hit subscribe on iTunes to a podcast, you're technically subscribing to their RSS feed. And so, we could do a lot. We could get into all the nitty-gritty detail of how exactly you do that. But I think it's best if we just kind of cover the basics tonight. And then if you guys have any questions, you are more than welcome to email me. And that's mike@wiegertech.com, WIEGER tech.com. You guys can just email me. So basically, though, to just kind of recap that, you have a website, you have a host, and you put your file on your host. You bring that link over to your website, and you publish a blog post with that link in there. That updates the RSS feed, and then everyone can get your latest episode of your show. And that is how I get my stuff to you. That is how you guys get my content, unless you watch it on YouTube, which is a whole different story. Yeah. But so that's how I do it. And that's kind of, I think, the default way to kind of get your stuff out there. But I know you guys have your own system. And so I kind of want to hear how you guys end up getting your show to the end user. When I subscribe to you guys, how am I getting your show?
All right, so what I do is I email Jimmy after I make an
So Jimmy is the mastermind behind this whole operation then.
Our webmaster, Jimmy. I'm just kidding. Actually, I think Jimmy can handle this one better than I can.
Well, thank you. I'm the wizard Jimmy, apparently, but outside the emails, getting emails and looking at them and then saying, what the heck? No. Yeah, our host personally, we go through GoDaddy. That's our domain and also provides our hosting. But I do it, I don't want to say it like kind of curmudgeon, but it's kind of the old fashioned way. So I'm doing it just programming through HTML and a little bit of a little C style and stuff like that, and JavaScript. But essentially, I upload the files. I kind of organize out the web pages. In terms of RSS feed, that was a funny experience for myself because I had to learn essentially how to code a XML for that to kind of correlate with that on our server. But in terms of things, I just create kind of like a template page. And before we kind of open up our site, we had these ideas, like formatting ideas of how we wanted to present it. We went for more of a simplistic style, but what allows us to do is I have a folder I keep for each show. For each, everything has its own. It's all organized. The web pages are organized out for those shows. And essentially, I make sure to edit the data in terms of, hey, this is what the show is. I upload the MP3 directly onto the server itself into a separate folder. And I program in an audio player so that when you do go to the web page, it will call up the audio player that you have by default or that the web browser likes to call up. So you can listen to the audio. I also like to give an option that directly links to download the podcast itself. And then what we also have is a little bit of coding, because iTunes is really nice about it. Actually, you could search up through help on Apple for their iTunes, and they actually give you a code that you can actually just copy and paste that will give you the subscribe button. Essentially, it gives you the commands where if they click a button, as long as you type in the appropriate XML page that you want them to subscribe to, it will actually auto-subscribe them to that podcast, which is really nice. So,
that is nice.
It offers them something where, I like this podcast. I can listen to it in this webpage. Well, you know what? I'm going to download it as a MP3 and take it to go. Or, you know what? I'd rather subscribe to on iTunes and just keep on getting fed the new content as it comes. And the nice thing is, in terms of it, even if you're on iTunes and you're accessing your podcast, since it's on our servers, we could track it. It's something where we could be like, oh wow, this is actually pretty popular or whatnot. And in all honesty, I don't really look at the views as much. I look at them here and there, but it's not a case of me like, oh my God, Brian, your last podcast got 20 less downloads, and you need to change this. Like my style is, let every person here, they have their own show. If they want to come up with something new, I'm totally for programming it to bring that front to it. And, we always welcome new content and, new creators. And I always feel like it's kind of an open platform just for us, it's our friends right now, but just to kind of have like our podcast up out there, but also our videos and things like that, and just kind of have it linked together. And it's still evolving. I'm still kind of working in the background to reformat a few things and try to make it look a little flashier, but not to be too cumbersome. And, recently we got a business trademark. We're looking at other avenues to kind of have the webpage kind of grow in interesting ways. But for us, it's essentially, for the other guys, for like Brian, he jokes about it, but, he sends an email, but he gives all the instructions with it. It's not like I'm writing up everything or anything like that.
You're just like pointing it towards iTunes.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah.
And then, it's just like, okay, this is what he just wants to post up. And I kind of copy and paste in through what we have for a template right now in terms of the web programming end. But it's kind of it's something that I kind of self-taught myself at a younger age, is basic HTML and stuff like that, and kind of grew interested to learn more about it. There's definitely so much more things you could do with the coding end that might be a little more crazy, I have to admit. But
so what you're saying essentially is you can go that route. You can also do like through the WordPress and stuff.
And WordPress is totally fine.
Right.
It's it's just, I guess I'm just so familiar with HTML. That's what I've been doing. But
well, and that's where I said, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. And for a guy like you who enjoys doing it that way, that's the way you learned, it works. And I still find all your guys' show on iTunes. And so technically, it's where it needs to be and stuff like that. So it's really however you want to do it. And so where I wanted to go kind of from here is that I love the way that you guys do, your own custom setup. But for those of you guys who, are just getting into it and don't have the skills that James does, you're not a wizard like James, then I definitely would think that, getting a host and then getting a WordPress site is probably the best way to go. But like I said, if you guys ever have any questions, getting a website up off the ground, getting your podcast up off the ground, you can definitely email me, and that's mike@uyghurtech.com. And so you guys can definitely just email me over there, and I can get you guys started and get you guys, up and going. And so that is that. So once we've done this, technically, you have your RSS feed. You can take it and submit it to iTunes and all of the different directories. But that's relatively simple. You go to iTunes, submit a new podcast, and give them the feed and all the information, and then you are good. So that is kind of, in a nutshell, a very condensed version of how you create a podcast and get it up and going. But I don't think that's the most important part. And so the topic I want to talk to you guys about and get your input on is actually the content creation side. So leaving aside all the technology, leaving aside all the steps you do to actually get the podcast up and going, when we are sitting here and all of a sudden we fire up the mic and the light turns red and you're about to talk, what about that content makes your show special? How do you guys plan out what you're going to talk about? And so I guess we'll just start at the basic is, where did you guys, or how do you guys come up ideas for different shows? So when you guys first started, like the Back to the Past podcast, Brian's Yours, or anything like that, where do you guys have an idea? Do you really plan it out, or do you guys just kind of, go with it when you think of the first idea?
I think number one, no matter what direction you end up taking it later, you got to have the passion. You got to have the passion for what it is that that you're doing.
I love that you said that.
I mean, that's most important. I think above and beyond all, because if you don't, then it comes out really apparent. When you produce a show.
If you don't enjoy what you do, then why are you doing it? And if people will feed off of your energy, off of, like you said, Brian, your passion. When it shows versus you just being like, well, I'm just going to have to talk about what's this paper tells me about Kanye West. I don't know.
And then I think from there we have a couple different avenues we take. Like Back to the Past is very, very scripted. My Back to the Past podcast focuses on a history lesson that goes no more than 15 minutes. It's very concise. It's very I don't know, scripted may or may not be the right word for it, but it's very produced in that sense.
You do a great job of hiding that then, because I honestly couldn't tell it was scripted. I thought you were kind of talking about things, and it sounds like you're actually, for you then scripting works really well because you sound really knowledgeable when you have that kind of script in front of you, and it sounds like you're just kind of talking, off the cuff. But I like that, and I like your length of time on that podcast. It's perfect because for a person like me, honestly, I'm terrible at history, and I actually don't even care for it. I don't care for history too much. But with yours, you take a whole topic and you talk about it in 15 minutes, and you're done. And I've gotten all of a sudden a history lesson in 15 minutes, and that's honestly why I listen to your show, because it's a compact history lesson. You make it fun. You cover the points I need to know, and it's not like sitting through an hour-and-a-half lecture in college. You've got it in 15 minutes. And so kudos to you on that. A little tangent on how awesome your podcast is, but I really enjoy it. So
I appreciate a lot of that has to do with, like, I'm an educator by trade. I'm a teacher, and I think that, like, some of that comes into that aspect of, like in high school or in junior high or elementary, kids can't sit still for more than 15, 20 minutes. You got to keep changing topics. You got to keep doing different things. And so when I lecture in class, it's no longer maximum in my lectures are 20 minutes max, because you start losing your audience otherwise.
Right. Exactly.
But, I think some of our other shows aren't as, I guess scripted would be the right word. We have more of a topical type thing we're talking about.
Are you talking about like Random Guys?
Talk about like Random Guys, and then to another extent, like Morning After Review.
I think the thing is you still have a framework.
Yeah.
We have like idea, like when it came to Random Guys, it was when we were thinking of what kind of content we wanted to produce, like during the site's early days, and the site's still under a year old. So, but we were kind of like, we want to have something where maybe we could just sit back and talk about a certain topic that might interest us. It could be something as banal as what's your favorite, superhero, or it could be something more extravagant or more thought-provoking, and to just look at those different topics, and we just go off of a thread, if we go off of each other,
And it splits off into multiple different directions. Like we could start talking about superheroes, and all of a sudden it switches to some wrestling thing, and then back to superheroes and the movies, and it can jump all over the place. And we try to keep it like under an hour usually, but
order chaos.
Yeah,
right.
We kind of like look at the time, like, oh, we're getting close. Like someone looks at the time, like, oh, we're getting close to an hour. We kind of should
And then we talked about the morning after review, reviewing a movie soon after we had watched it. We always, let people know, hey, spoiler alert, give people the heads up. So we have almost like segments sort of.
Yeah. And with that one, I think what makes it different too is that when we're done with it, there's still, there's still more to add on. Like I like to add in like more audio, like the trailer, and add in little fun stuff and,
right.
Kind of, I don't want to say gloss it up.
A little bit more producing on that end.
Yeah.
Right.
Random Guys is like straight to the core. Let's get to the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
When it comes to like my Disney review, when I'm recording it, because I recorded the audio and I put up pictures, and so it's on YouTube. So just pretty much a podcast with pictures almost. I just hit record and I have like notes in front of me. Like if I need like, the date or something like that, I have that in front of me, but I just kind of just go other than the little like details I need to remember to say if I come across it. Otherwise it's just how I feel and go with it. And if I mess up, I tend to cut it out because I'll be like, oh wait, what was that date? And then I'll go look it up and then just cut that part out when I need to.
So Nate, you're a lot like me. Like for those of you guys watching the video, I take a sheet of printer paper and I write down just basic bullet points, just enough to keep me on topic, especially for me because I'm a solo guy show. So if I forget where I'm going, there's no one else there to kind of prod me along in the conversation. And so I'll put bullet points, but then I don't really like to follow a script because I'll actually stumble over my words more than I would actually be useful with a script. So I kind of just go open-ended and I have my bullet points. I know what I want to talk about, but that all comes back to what Brian said. And I think what Brian said is key is passion. If you're going to do a podcast, and if you're going to do a podcast for any length of time, I think a lot of the reason they call it pod fading, and they say usually most podcasts don't make it past 7 episodes. If you make it past 7 episodes, you've actually, you're going to probably do it for a lot longer. So 7 episodes is kind of the make it or break it point. And I would totally see that because if you're not passionate about what you're doing, you're going to become disinterested. And all of a sudden podcasting is going to become a pain. You're like, oh man, I got to sit down and do that podcast. You got to get it out. And you almost feel like it's a job instead of something fun to do. And especially if you're going to do a podcasting in order to make money, podcasting nowadays, especially, within the last year, I think the ability to make money while podcasting is huge. I think there's a big potential for it, but you have to have passion about what you're talking about. Number one, because like Brian said, your audience can tell if you're passionate about it. And if you're kind of bored with your topic, so is your audience. I can guarantee it. But if you're passionate about it, number one, it gets you excited to do your podcast each week or day or however often you do it. Number two, you can just kind of improvise and you get really excited about talking and you don't even need really anything to go off because you're passionate about it. And so there's just so many things that passion ties into. And I know if you guys have ever listened to my show before, that's not the first time you've heard me say that. But it's because honestly, it's passion for me is a huge aspect of it. And it's why I love doing the show every Tuesday. I actually get, excited and giddy on Tuesday, getting all ready for it. And I love doing it because it's fun for me to do. But so, yeah, along those lines, so, you guys have a mix of it. You have scripted shows, you have random shows, but overall, you guys just really like the topics that you guys talk about. And I would say I'm the same way. I'm not scripted. I just do bullet points. And then for each week, though, so, let's say the night before, or I don't know, however long it takes you guys to plan out your episode, how do you guys decide? So you have your show, you have your topic, but how do you guys decide each week what you're going to talk about? Is it right before? Is it, oh, wait, next week we should talk about this? How do you guys plan out each individual episode after you have your show started?
This is Brian. I can go first, I guess. For me, the Back to the Past, it's somewhat. I try to mix it up, so it's not a chronological order of history. I try to bounce around different eras, so that way, if you're not as much into World War II era, but you kind of are more into learning about the Revolution or something, that's cool because it's gonna be all over. Next week will be something different. And then the other aspect is I do put out on Twitter. Asking people, hey, what era of history do you want to learn about next? And sometimes it's more successful than others. I mean, we're still pretty early on it, but sometimes I'll get a little feedback and then I'll say, sure, no problem. That'll be coming up in 2 weeks then. And Back to the Past for me is an every other week episode, just because I'm a pretty busy guy, and so I find that my podcast is more time consuming than my articles usually are. And so I usually have that spaced out like that, but that's what I do.
Okay.
In terms of Random Guys, it's almost like the day of. I think almost sometimes we might have had a topic maybe a month in advance,
like Halloween or something.
Yeah, it might be. You know what? Next month maybe we should talk about this Halloween. But then it's like, yeah, it's like we're done. In terms of like, even though it's just not quite a podcast yet, but I'm actually going to adapt into a podcast. Also as well, outside of it being a video, is Tim and Jim. I am going to make a webcam-less version of that video series because I feel like that could also run well as a podcast.
Oh yeah.
But for that in particular, it's looking at both trending topics that are trending, and then also looking at things that I kind of personally want to explore into, and then I kind of let Tim know about it maybe a week in advance, like, hey, want to do this, want to talk about this, and then we kind of do our little research, but then almost kind of like random guys, we go on to something, we pull it out, and then we're going off to something else, and,
right.
But I try my best to prepare, be a little bit more prepared with that stuff.
Right. So you guys are a lot like me because, for me, I will be like, oh, so I'll end this show tonight. And then hopefully, what I hope for is that something in the next week, someone will ask me a question either in person or on email, and it'll spark an idea and be like, oh, I should do an entire episode on that. So it's like someone asked me the other day how I listen to audio in my car. And actually, it was actually how my wife does it without a auxiliary plug-in. And so last week I was like, oh, I could do an entire episode on like my top 10 tech things from my car. And so that's kind of how I do it. So for me, usually it's like waiting for some sort of prodding, like, okay, you should talk about this. But if that doesn't happen, then usually the weekend before, I'll just kind of search around for some news articles about something happening in the tech sphere, and then I'll kind of build a topic around that. But, sometimes I'm the day before or the day of, it'll be Tuesday during the day, and I'm looking for articles, looking for things to do. So, not as planned out, definitely not anything more than 4 days, anything beyond that. But I think a lot of us, the commonality between you guys and me is a lot of times our stuff comes from outside people. Like Brian said, he gets tweets, and you guys will just think of stuff that would be fun to talk about. And that makes it fun because then it's more inspired by your audience, or even if they're not your audience, they're inspired by people around you. It's things that people want to hear.
Yeah.
And I think especially with me, I cover tech. And so I can definitely get into techie things that I think are cool, but I'm like, okay, the normal people, I'm all about the normal people listening to my show. They're not going to think this is fun. They're going to think it's completely boring and nerdy. So that's why for me, I like to get, some probing from people around my life, because those are the people that I'm kind of directing my show for. And so that's for me, the most important part is finding content that's meant for the average normal tech consumer for me. So
might I also add that kudos to you because you do this live. So it's a little extra pressure to, keep the material flowing, I would say. And
yeah, it definitely is. It starts out being a lot of pressure, but honestly, for me, it really helps me keep on a regimented schedule. So people know that at 7:00 on Tuesdays, that's when I'm going to go live. And it really keeps me on a schedule. It keeps me honest. But you're right. It is kind of a lot of pressure to, be kind of on your toes and ready for that hour. Once 7:00 hits, there's no going back because this is live and it's out there. So if I mess up and say something I don't want to, I kind of have to live with it. But
or if you said, if you're like me, you just say magic missile and people are giving you weird looks.
Right. You just say stuff and you don't know what it means. And the nice part about mine is that YouTube is actually not where I get most of my views. I don't even actually get very many on YouTube. I kind of use it as a live platform, and then it just goes on YouTube as a result. And so for my audio side, for my actual podcast, if you subscribe on iTunes, to the audio, I actually go in and edit that. So if anything happens, I can go in and edit it out. I go in and I add in my intro music and my outro music and stuff like that. So the audio version is edited, but the video is completely unedited. So you kind of, get the raw version of Open Mic Night. So have you guys ever considered going live? I know you guys do Twitch, so you guys do a little bit of live, but have you guys ever thought about doing anything else live at all?
It's a lot of right now, a lot of the live stuff I have to admit is Twitch based right now.
Okay.
We do have our constant Throwback Thursday Throwdown, which happens 5 p.m. every Pacific on Thursday. So that's kind of our live show. We have our marathons planned out and things like that. But we do have ideas like we want to do for like WrestleMania, and because we also have an interest in wrestling, to maybe do a pre-show live on YouTube and a post-show live. Like we have ideas that we want to float on where we want to start doing different kinds of live events.
That's a good idea. See, I've always wanted something like that, like maybe like a TV show where you go live before the show, like all the fans of like, you know, Arrow or some show, you get together before and after. So I like that idea. That's kind of cool.
I like that. I you know, I just thought of this, so nobody's doing this idea. I'm just kidding. Is, you know, like a big movie like Avengers 2, like not a morning after, but an hour before.
What do you think it'll be?
What do you think it's going to be on, you know, live, and then you see the movie and then or something like that, you know?
Definitely.
It's just we got like right now we have a lot of things in formulation. It's still kind of growing our legs, but right now our live end of our site right now is mainly Twitch, but we're looking at growing that out.
Okay. Very cool. And see, so, you know, kind of our last little topic that I was going to bring up is be careful if you get into podcasting, because my one word of warning is that there is always something more you can do. There's always better audio you can do. You can start live streaming. You can get a better video camera. You can get more lighting. You can add segments. You can start interviewing people. There is an endless list of things you can add to your podcast. And for me, it consumes my mind probably more than it should during the day. You know, I'm in law school and I work, so I probably shouldn't be thinking about it too much. But honestly, ways to improve my podcast are constantly going through my head. And a lot of the podcasts I listen to are like School of Podcasting by Dave Jackson, Ask the Podcast Coach with Jim and Dave, podcasts like that where they talk about how to produce a good podcast. Those just make my head spin even more because there's just so many ways I could do something better. So that's kind of the one warning. I don't know if you guys have got that bug yet. That's just like, okay, we could even do this and we could do that. And you always have all these grand ideas and you're like, okay, I got to be realistic. I don't know how many of these I can actually do, but
I get that with, you know, with the videos, I think a little bit here and there in terms of just ideas, you know,
right.
Editing and get kind of better things nailed down and do kind of weird, crazy ideas. But
I would say too, it's not just, you know, into podcasting, but it's the idea. I think it comes from the person who's doing it too. Like if you have that type of personality that, you know, you're not satisfied with what you have. You got to do better. You got to always improve yourself and do more. I think it comes from within too. You know, no matter if it's whatever your art is, whether it's podcasting, videos, writing a script or whatever.
I have to admit though, like ever since starting recording podcasts, I would say more of an audiophile. Like it's like I'm starting to recognize a little few things here and there, you know, and I'm just like, oh, you know, before I, you know,
definitely. You start to hear the good sounding audio
like,
and bad sounding audio.
Yeah, that's the thing. You start listening to it and you're like, man, that's it. Like if you asked me like 2 years ago, I'd be like, oh, that sounds great. But now it's not with like all of our pop, nothing like that. Which like sometimes I'll be like, I'll listen to it and I'll be like noticing like little things, you know.
Yep.
And not just with our podcast, but with, you know, just like music or other things. You're starting to, you know, kind of take notes. And you're like, huh, you know, that's interesting. Aware. You become more aware. That's probably the better word for it. You become a little bit more aware, and then maybe a little self-conscious about some of your stuff. But at the same time, I kind of find it maybe more hilarious when I see myself flub up or something and something, you know. I'm not trying to say I like to make a fool of myself all the time, but, you know, I see something like on Tim and Jim and Rhino guys where, you know, it's something that just kind of was organic, a little flub, but then it became something else and kind of joke on it. And you're just kind of like, afterwards, you're like, oh, that's actually kind of a little more funny than I thought it was in the first place.
Oh yeah. I've definitely experienced that quite a few times, especially with being live. So, all right. Well, actually guys, time flew. We are at the end of our hour. And so we are going to have to sign off here pretty quick, but for you guys, where can we find your stuff? So, just your contact information, where can we find all your guys' podcasts at?
Sure. Well, the best place to go for everything, just redbuttonjamfest.com.
Okay.
That's the best place. We are on iTunes. So if you search for Red Button Jam Fest on iTunes, you'll find the 3 different podcasts that we have, Back to the Past, Morning After Review, and Random Guys Talk About. And that's as far as where to find the podcast.
Yeah. And also you can find our other kinds of content as well. Our things such as our Twitch and our YouTube and the videos.
Perfect.
We have a lot of stuff like that. And you can reach me at just simply James.
For Twitter,
yeah.
Gotta love the Twitter. That's the way. Yeah, if you guys want to contact me, that's the same way. It's okay. So at Simply James, right? Simply James.
At just simply James.
Alrighty.
It's something where it's almost like who's on first base,
right?
And My email address is jimwa@redbuttonjamfest.com.
Perfect.
And Nate,
you can contact me on Twitter at Nathan Chu. That's NATHANCHU. And Twitter is the best way to contact me.
Awesome. And then Brian, I think you're your last one up.
Sure. All right. Mine's at RBJ Brian. That's Brian with an I. And my email is brian@redbuttonjamfest.com.
Awesome. I want to thank you guys for coming on tonight. I just love talking podcasting, and you guys were a lot of fun to do it with. So everyone be sure, definitely go to redbuttonjamfest.com and check their stuff out. I love all their podcasts. They are fantastic. Stick around, guys. We'll do a little bit of post-show after we end the live stream here. But for you guys who want to contact me, WegerTech.com is kind of everything but OMN Podcast for open mic night. OMNpodcast.com is where you can get all of my podcast information, all the subscription links and stuff like that. Or you can contact me on Twitter at WegerTech. That's WIEGER tech.com. And of course, email mike@WegerTech.com. I want to remind you guys to go on the site, and if you guys ever buy anything through Amazon, anything at all, you guys can support the Uyghur Tech Scholarship Fund. Go into omnpodcast.com or uyghurtech.com, and you can find the link there. If you just go to omnpodcast.com/Amazon or uyghurtech.com/Amazon, it'll take you right there. Doesn't cost you any more. You guys won't even notice. It redirects you to the store, but it gives me a little credit, tells them that I sent you over there, and you guys can support the Uyghur Tech Scholarship Fund through that. So I want to say thank you for all you guys who came out live tonight, and of course, all of you lovely listeners who are listening to the podcast after the fact. Again, we stream every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central Time over on omnpodcast.com/live. Come out and join. It's a lot of fun. There's a chat room that you guys can join. I want to thank you guys who are in the chat tonight. You guys are awesome. But until I see you guys next time, tech on.